Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The darkness of the end descended on Wahabdin under the light of the midday sun, as the elderly man was dragged through the streets of Mirpur, which he had walked every night for decades, lighting the kerosene street lamps. Then a young man named Panju held up an ancient muzzle-loading rifle and fired at the lamplighter's face, point blank. Wahabdin fell over, his hands still clasped together as if begging for mercy. This was the first violent death I witnessed, Partition survivor Bal Gupta would later write. And at a mere 10 years old, this horrifying scene affected me deeply. Elsewhere in Jammu province, British officials recorded seeing Kashmir's Maharaja Hari Singh handing out weapons to Sikh and Hindu militia, sometimes pausing to watch the slaughter from his car. Former British Indian Army soldiers and ethnic Pashtun tribesmen, historian Ilyas Chattha records, also slaughtered Hindus in the thousands. The victims included Sardar Jagat Singh, who had saved the life of Bal Gupta's Urdu teacher from a mob. Even as the state collapsed, one officer in the Maharaja's militia sought to dam the rising tide of blood. Lieutenant Colonel Pir Muhammad Khan was made one of the 4 Kashmir representatives sent to the Rajya Sabha in 1952. Then Kashmir Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammad Abdullah hailed his efforts, saying that, I quote, "When terror reigned supreme on every side, he stayed there undaunted and extinguished the communal fire." Later, the plot twisted. Lieutenant Colonel Khan, a landed aristocrat who listed hunting and shooting as his hobbies, ran several madrasas for children and served as Kashmir's Minister of Communications, Forests and its militia until 1951, became state president, not of the National Conference, but of the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Jan Sangh. Then, the man who an official party account of the movement called the Nationalist Khan was all but erased from history. Lieutenant Colonel Khan's marginality to today's Hindu nationalist pantheon helps us understand a really important larger story that's unfolding in Jammu and Kashmir. The story of a state that remains partitioned by a line drawn in blood. Earlier this week, as Home Minister Amit Shah staged a triumphant election rally in Jammu, news began to emerge that the Bharatiya Janata Party had been dragging its feet on putting up candidates to contest the 3 Lok Sabha seats of the Kashmir Valley. The lotus will bloom on its own in the valley, the Home Minister said, in an apparent admission that the BJP hasn't been able to gain the popular legitimacy outside the Hindu majority regions south of the Chenab River. The Kashmir Valley clearly represents a distinct universe separated by faith, culture and ethnic identity. As the Home Minister noted, the stone-throwing Islamists have disappeared after Article 370 was revoked. Terrorism has declined. The tortured communal relationship that created the Kashmir crisis to begin with, though, remains strangely raw. Kashmir's modern political life began to emerge a century ago, as a new class of educated young Muslims brought the ideas of the plains in Punjab to challenge the Dogra political order and the elites who held it up. Islam, historian Ian Copeland has noted, provided young leaders like Sheikh Abdullah a language with which to assert the collective rights of Kashmiri Muslims. The stage for this, of course, had been set by the Dogra monarchy itself, historian Chitralekha Zutshi has shown, because the monarchy founded its legitimacy on its status as a guardian of the Hindu faith. The fire set off in 1947 burned down Abdullah's hopes of emerging as a leader for all of Jammu and Kashmir. That summer, Muslim residents of Poonch, many supportive of the Muslim Conference, who were Abdullah's pro-Pakistan rivals, began a civil disobedience movement and stopped paying taxes. Hari Singh responded by seeking to suppress the movement with brutal force. This, in turn, led local veterans of the British Indian Army and Indian National Army, many resettled around the region as a reward for their service, to form themselves into militia. Former soldiers, some of whom promoted themselves to the rank of Field Marshal, historian Christopher Snedden Riley notes, soon evicted the Maharaja's forces from much of what is today Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Though Poonch would eventually be saved by the Indian Army after a long, dogged campaign which is beautifully documented by Lieutenant General L.P. Singh, communal slaughter raged all around. Large-scale partition pogroms broke out in Jammu after news of massacres in Rawalpindi, Sialkot and Mirpur were carried there by refugees. The eminent journalist G.K. Reddy, then working for the Kashmir Times, saw Muslim refugee convoys being hacked to pieces by militia and entire villages being burnt down. The state-enabled slaughter, mirrored by genocidal violence in Punjab and elsewhere, provoked fears among Abdullah's constituency in Kashmir over their eventual future in India. Abdullah responded by casting himself as the sole spokesman of ethnic Kashmiri Muslims and pushing for independence. This decision, which by the way was made against the wishes of other National Conference leaders, notably Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad, would have profound consequences. Even as Abdullah sought to secure Kashmiri self-determination, political scientist Navneeta Chadda Behra has argued, he resigned on promises to grant similar freedoms to Ladakh and Jammu. Ethnic Kashmiris acquired disproportionate influence over the state's political life as well as its bureaucracy and economy. The backlash was predictable. Led by the Hindu nationalist politician Syama Prasad Mukherjee, the Praja Parishad movement cast itself as a defender of Hindu rights and fought for the full integration of Jammu and Kashmir into the Indian Union. Though the Praja Parishad is sometimes cast as embodying the reactionary impulses of dispossessed feudal landowners, large traders and ex-military officials like Lieutenant Colonel Khan also supported the group. The scholar Rekha Chaudhary has noted that the Praja Parishad, and I quote, came to be supported by many others who perceived the policies of the National Conference as biased against Jammu. Following his release from prison in 1963, Abdullah used the spectre of the Praja Parishad to stoke communal fears in Kashmir. In one speech, he claimed that the Praja Parishad was part of a project to convert India, I quote, into a religious state wherein the interests of Muslims will be jeopardized. Then, in 1977, when the Jamaat-e-Islami in Kashmir allied with the Janta Party in Jammu, he accused its leaders of shaking hands with men, I quote, whose hands were still red with the blood of Muslims. National Conference leaders administered oaths to their cadre on the Quran and a piece of rock salt, a symbol of Pakistan, to distinguish it from the sea salt that came from India. Later in 1983, elections demonstrated that others could play the communal game too. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi conducted an incendiary campaign in Jammu, built around the claim that the discrimination the region faced was because it was a part of Hindu India. Across the Pir Panjal, former Chief Minister Farooq Abdullah and his newfound ally Mirwais Mohammad Farooq let it be known that they were defending Kashmir's Muslim identity. At a 1987 rally in Srinagar, candidates of the Muslim United Front, Farooq Abdullah's opponents, dressed themselves in the white robes of the pious and declared that Islam could not survive under the authority of a secular state. From the rise of the long jihad on, the division between Hindu-majority Jammu and Muslim-majority Kashmir became cast in concrete. In a 1998 book, Kashmir's Islamic patriarch Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani suggested that the state's secession from India was essential for the survival of Islam itself. In 2006, following a successful Islamist campaign against prostitution in Srinagar, Gilani launched the fateful mobilization that eventually exploded in long-drawn street violence in both Kashmir and in Jammu. Leading up to the appointment of Lieutenant Colonel Khan as Bharatiya Jan Sangh state president in 1972, the party had concluded that it was necessary to widen its reach. Even though the Jan Sangh's Hindu nationalist ideological positions had significant support, Electoral success eluded it, even as it pushed for the flowering of a new Hindu cultural order, political scientist Sharma noted back in 1969. The Jansangh began casting itself as a platform for economic and social democracy open to all. Elite Muslims like Khan, with deep roots in both Kashmir and in Jammu, seemed to represent a solution to the party's inclusiveness problem. The competitive communalism unleashed by the National Conference and the Congress in the 1970s, though, put an end to this brief experiment. From the late 1980s, as jihadist violence exploded and Hindus were targeted in a series of massacres across the state, the BJP recast itself once again as the party of the Hindus. Although Farooq Khan, a highly decorated police officer and grandson of the Lieutenant Colonel, is today a senior member of the BJP, his case is an exception. The party's leadership inside Kashmir has little heft and even less electoral traction. The second experiment in bridging the Kashmir-Jammu fault line, which was the BJP People's Democratic Party alliance, described as a historic opportunity by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that second experiment exploded under the weight of the Islamism encouraged by former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti and aggressive Hindu nationalism in Jammu. Today, the leaders of the PDP and BJP, as you know, have very little but abuse for each other. The National Conference, for its part, is presenting itself as the party of the Muslims of Kashmir and Jammu, while the Congress has ceased, like the BJP, to seek electoral space in the valley. Few think of Kashmir as a partitioned state. Yet, its politics tells us that's exactly what it is. The deep trauma experienced in 1947 and fears that savage bloodletting could once again erupt have led paranoiac communalism to congeal over the state's political life. Ending this dysfunction needs a genuinely democratic politics that reaches across the frontiers of hate. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm a contributing editor at ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.